Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to this video where we'll be handling custom exceptions. So if that sounds interesting, let's dive right in. As you can see in the notes, custom exceptions allow you to define your own error types to better reflect the specific issues that might arise in your application. And this can make your error handling more precise and readable. So that's what we learn in this session. But before learning about custom exceptions, let's first learn about how to raise exception. So let's say, let me just put some code here. Let's say I have this function. This function is called check edge, and it takes in one parameter edge, and it checks if that edge is a negative number. And if it's a negative number, it will raise an exception, and if it's not a negative number, it will return edge. So this is how you raise an exception using this raise keyword. So the raise keyword is used to manually trigger an exception. So if you want to trigger your own exception, you can trigger it using this raise keyword. And it is often used to create custom exceptions or to re-raise exception after catching them. So how to do this? You just put a condition, because you can't just raise an exception from nowhere. You have to put a condition first, then you put the raise keyword, then you put the type of exception that you want to raise. We already discussed the types of exception and told you the common one, that the value error, the type error, those are one of the common exceptions. So in this case, we raise this value error. So if someone provides an edge that is not positive, we'll raise a value error, and this function returns the edge. So in this line 8 here, I'm calling that function check edge with input that will be provided by the user. So in line 6, I'm prompting the user to enter some input, and if the user enters that input will be passed to this check edge function, and now we can have access to that result. So if I just save this code and maybe I run it, you can see I'll be prompted to enter some input. I'll just be told check edge, enter edge. I can just enter 10, then you can see the program was just continued fine. But if, let's say for example, I enter something like a negative number, let's say -5, you can see I'll have an error, that is edge cannot be negative. This is a value error. So okay, and you say that to catch an error, you can use the try catch. So since you know that this is the code that brings the error, you can just put this code inside the try. I'm just showing you can handle. In this session, learning about how to raise the error. But now you have seen that the error has been raised, but you can just make this code well by just putting it inside the try block. So I'll just put here try. Then all this code will be inside the try block. So I'll just tab there. Then I can put my except here. Then you know that the error is the value error. Maybe I can just use this as E to print the actual error. So I can just print, then I can just say use the F strings here like that, then I say error, then I print that error like that. Okay, so if I save this code and now run it again and try to put a negative value, say -8, you see you'll get error edge cannot be negative. So if this value error is hit, this edge cannot be negative, that will be raised, and you have proved it with this except block here. So if someone puts a negative edge, it will raise this exception, and once you catch that exception and print that error, this error that we put here in the raise is what will be returned. And that is how you raise exceptions. Also, you can create your own exception types. We already said that there are some common exception types, like here you're using this value error, and there's that type error, division by 0 error. You can create our own exception type, and to do that you just use this syntax here. It's here in the notes. You just create your own class, and that class will inherit from the exception class. And I'll just assume that you all know about object-oriented programming and you know about the inheritance, so I'll not teach about inheritance here. I'll just show you how to create your own custom class. So I'll just create my own class. Maybe I can call it invalid edge error, but you can just give it any name. Then what it has to do, it has to inherit from the exception class. So I'll just put here exception in bracket, and so this is how you show inheritance. So you can just put some things here, or you can just say pass. So let me just start with this pass. So now we have our own error type, and since you have our own error type, you can just raise it how we want. So maybe I can just raise it. So I'll just say here maybe invalid error type, not important, invalid edge error. Then I can just check for it also here as we did with the other error exception types. So I'll just say invalid edge error. Then maybe if it is raised, I'll just say edge cannot be negative. So now I've created my own exception type here. It's called invalid edge error, which inherits from the exception. And now since I have it in this, I can just call it anywhere in this, like here in line 6, I'm raising that error, like the way we did with this value error where we raised the value error. Here also I'm raising this invalid edge error, and currently it does not take any argument, but we can just modify it anyhow you want. But I just made mine simple, so you can see it does not take anything, so I'll just call it like that. So if I raise it, and if someone puts something that is not something that edge that is negative, this exception will be raised, and since it will be raised, this except block will be run, and I expect to see in the terminal edge cannot be negative. So let me save this code and run it. So let me just first run it with the positive numbers. I'll just say something like 4. You can see 4, it has no error. Now if I put a negative number like -2, you can see it will say edge cannot be negative, because if I put a negative number, it will raise this invalid edge error exception, and in line 12 you are catching that exception and we are handling it. And that is how you create your own custom exceptions. Like I said earlier, you can make this exception anyhow you want. For example, maybe let me just copy this code and put it here. So I believe you know about the init. Maybe I can make my invalid edge error to take a message. So when someone is creating this error, they have to pass a message, and that is what the init does. So now if I create this error, I can pass a message. Let me pass this same message that I had here. I'll just cut that and paste it here. I think I forgot one quote, so I'll just return that quote there. Okay. If I raise this error, I have to pass a message, because I've said that's how the init works. If you don't know how init works, you can just watch the OOP video and you'll know more about init. Then now here you can just say invalid error. Maybe you can get that exact message, then you can just print that message here like that. So maybe I can save this code and maybe run it so that you can see it in the terminal. So if I just wait for that edge, I put a negative number like -8, you can see it will say edge cannot be negative. That is because when the edge is negative, this invalid error will be raised, and I'm raising it with this message that edge cannot be negative, because that's what the init expect me to call this with. And now if I come in the expect block, I'll catch that error, then I'll print the message. And that is how you can create your own custom exceptions. And the best practices, I think we already did this, all of them. You can just go through the notes and you can see how to use that. So that is it with exception handling. I believe it was powerful session, so see you in the next sessions. Peace out.